Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spliced in Later. I say that cautiously as I record this for you. My Surface and my recording system all seems to be glitching out on me at the moment, which is something that is not limited to my recording setup. It seems to be a computer-wide issue. So I only put this on in concern that this thing just will not work while I'm doing this. But if you're hearing this, then I guess it did work. So yippee-ki-yay, let's press on before it all combusts on me. I don't think this will be a long episode. I don't have too much to say. But as promised, we are continuing our run of movie reviews during the summer blockbuster season. And what better way to have something for this era time than a live-action Disney remake. Something that is par the course for this time of year, though took a bit of a backseat during COVID, and has also sometimes been delegated to Disney+. It is the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid, based on the 1989 Disney movie. Now, there have been plenty of Disney remakes, that much is sure. I've reviewed quite a few of them here on Spliced in Later, and the general consensus I have for them is that I don't hate them. I often don't love them, but I'm perfectly fine with them, which I think is a nice middle ground, because opinions on these remakes vary wildly. There are people that absolutely despise them because they're never as good as the originals that they're based on, and they're just a cash grab by Disney to make money off an IP. And those people are right. And then there are people that are just really happy and excited to see their favorite movies retold in live action in a different way, but they still get to hear their favorite songs and see those favorite characters. And those people are right too. Your opinion of the quality of a live action remake will depend tremendously on how much you value and love the original Disney that this is remade on. If you love the Aladdin movie, then you're probably not going to like the live action one. If you love the Lion King, you probably won't like the live action one. Or you could be the complete opposite and love both because it's just both the same thing and you recognize both. Criticism is often unfairly thrown at these movies before they even come out, based on repetition and things that come up in all these different remakes. But no matter what lane Disney appears to pick, they can't win. Either they do a shot-for-shot complete remake of the original Disney film. They don't deviate from the source material. They have the same lines, the same camera shots, the same execution of scenes and songs, and people give them a hard time for that. Or they'll deviate wildly from the source material, try to do something different with the story, with the brand, take Dumbo on a completely different adventure, and people will give them shit for that, saying, no, where's my remake of Dumbo? I want it to be as close to the original 62-minute movie as absolutely possible. So here on Spliced in Later, I leave all that aside. I don't care about any of that. At the end of the day, I just try to review the movie based on enjoyment without any of that stuff hanging over. It's not always possible. It always does seep in a little bit. Sometimes that's just something that cannot be helped. But if you clicked onto this Little Mermaid review just to hear me go, it's just the exact same Little Mermaid but worse, or it's so different, I hate it, you're probably not going to get that. But you're also not going to get, this is the greatest Disney remake of all time. This is up there with The Jungle Book. This proves that Disney remakes are on the up and up. This movie is completely fine. It's competent. It's something that you will not regret seeing, but something that won't stick with you over the next couple of days after you've seen it. It will just go into the library of films in your head based on Disney animations. And your opinion on whether it's better or worse than the others will fluctuate wildly because it really doesn't do anything that much to stand out, either positively or negatively. I'm honestly surprised that it's taken this long for The Little Mermaid to get the live-action adaptation. I've talked extensively about The Little Mermaid's Disney film quite a lot on this podcast. It's got its own episode focusing on how it essentially launched the Disney Renaissance. I won't go deeply into that, but to sum it up completely, The Little Mermaid was both a critical and box office success for Disney. It was lightning in a bottle after a series of flops for them, Not necessarily critical flops, but certainly box office flops. Disney was not the recognizable, assured success that it is these days. The Little Mermaid really turned things around for them and launched the era in the 90s, the Disney Renaissance, where they just produced banger after banger with some really powerful stories, songs, characters, entertainment value. And most of those movies are being remade as we speak. You know, Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, Tarzan, Pocahontas, maybe not Pocahontas, depending how you feel about it, Hercules, all of those ones, Hunchback of Notre Dame. But we've already done a few remakes and we haven't got to Little Mermaid yet. Maybe it's because they're like James Cameron and they wanted the technology to get to the point where they could film underwater. That's not true, because anything filmed underwater is filmed in front of a green screen. So I guess it's just they must have a big board in Disney HQ with all the Disney animated films, and they spin it to see which one they'll make next. They may even have a second board that they spin to decide if it's going to go on Disney Plus or not, although I think there's more that goes into that decision. But they seem fairly confident about this one, unlike Peter Pan and Wendy or Pinocchio or Lady and the Tramp, that I wouldn't say got dumped on Disney Plus, but were just sort of released quietly on there, and certainly sparked enough discussion about them to prove why they were on Disney Plus. To get for a live action Disney remake now to get the theater release means Disney must be pretty confident that it's going to bring in the box office numbers. Whether not necessarily because the movie has the good quality, but just The Little Mermaid is a brand that we think will do well in that capacity. Is the remake any good? Yeah, sure. It's going to be hard for me to talk about because I really don't have too much to say. I had an okay time with it. I wasn't blown away. Some bits I was a little disappointed by, other bits I was pleasantly surprised by, but at the end of the day, it's a perfectly harmless Disney adaptation. It does fall into the category, if you want me to tell you if it's closer to shot-for-shot remake or does its own spin on the story, it's very close to shot-for-shot remake. Not quite, not like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, which really does the exact same thing, but right there, it's right on their heels. It is the same story of The Little Mermaid, Ariel, played in this film by Halle Bailey, who swims underwater with all her sisters, her overbearing father King Triton. She's got her friends, the fish Flounder, the crab Sebastian, the seagull Scuttle, and she dreams of going up into the real world and being part of our world. But her father forbids it, and she secretly longs for this Prince Eric, who she saw on a ship one day. Then that evil sea witch Ursula, this tentacle goopy drag queen of sorts, does a deal with her, a shady deal, where she gets legs but loses her voice. And then she has 3 days to try and get true love's kiss from Eric before she becomes the property of Ursula. Spoiler alert, everything will work out for her in the end, and it will be happily ever after, because it's a Disney film. That's the exact same plot in here. The execution of the film is pretty much exactly the same. There are some deviations which we'll get into, but the delivery of lines, the certain shooting of scenes, whether it's Eric hazily seeing Ariel as he wakes up, or the shark chasing Ariel in the shipwreck and its fins bouncing underneath the floorboards, or the way Ursula communicates with Flotsam and Jetsam, her creepy-ass eels. It's almost the exact same stuff. If that's the thing you're looking for, you're going to be really pleased. If you're looking for something different, this isn't the one for you. The performances, I thought, were a mix, for sure. Halle Bailey is great as Ariel. I thought she did a very good performance. Really embodied the main qualities that make Ariel such a great protagonist, which is her bravery, her sincerity, her naivety as well, and also her incredible singing voice. Just fantastic stuff in there for sure. I was pleasantly surprised by Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. I'm not a Melissa McCarthy fan. I find her humor to be overbearing and annoying. And that's probably my problem more than her problem. So I apologize to her for that if she ever, for some reason, listens to this podcast. But refreshingly enough, for her portrayal of Ursula, it was not just Melissa McCarthy doing her humor, but being Ursula. Like, she really tried to embody the character of Ursula that came from that original Disney. Now, she's no Pat Carroll. Pat Carroll is the one and only Ursula. Ursula's one of my all-time favorite Disney villains, easily. Her presence, her delivery, her evilness mixed with her slight comicalness is definitely one of the Disney villain highlights. Kind of like Captain Hook in that regard. But Melissa McCarthy really channels that essence that Pat Carroll put into that original performance and really embodies it and sort of makes it her own. For a lot of the actors in here, they do have to struggle making the role their own because the script is following so close to that original source material that it's hard for you to put your own mark on the character when you're being told to deliver the same lines and deliver them in the same manner. But I thought her performance of Poor Unfortunate Souls, her dynamic with whether it's Ariel or her eels or even with herself, a lot of her scenes are just her monologuing, as all good villains do. But I thought that was pretty good. Eric was interesting. I think the one group of characters that come off the best in this remake are the human characters, which never really occurred to me, but seeing it portrayed here in this movie, you do realize that the human characters are essentially nothing in that original Little Mermaid. Eric has no personality aside from, who's that mystery girl? I would like to marry her. I found her. I'm going to do it. And all the humans around him are like, you shouldn't fantasize about women. This one's nice though. Why don't you marry her? You're doing it? Okay, good. Eric has there's some interesting backstory that they allude to here. They try to expand more on what the humans are doing in this part of the world, who Eric is as a prince. Like, in that original movie, he was Prince Eric, but like, of what? It wasn't exactly clear what his kingdom was, what they were doing. In this manner, Eric has this interesting stuff that's alluded to where he's like an orphan that was washed up in a shipwreck. This kingdom is plagued by shipwrecks, and they blame the sea gods, the mer people. They think they're the ones who are doing it to them. So they're very, very scared of the water and don't want to venture out into the world. They want to stay on dry land and keep themselves safe. But he was adopted by the king and queen and is essentially a prince as a result of that. But he doesn't obviously want to stay on the island. He wants to venture out, see the world. He doesn't fear the water like everybody else does. There's more drive to him. There's more going on. And also to Grimsby, his manservant, the queen herself, who was, I don't think, even in the original one. So there's some depth to them, which we didn't get before, and which I kind of like. Sometimes the prince comes off a little cringy. I can't remember who played him. It was like Jonah Howard King or something. He gets his own little song in here. As with most Disney remakes, there are 2 or 3 new songs thrown into the match, which, while good, you can tell they're not songs from the original Disney animated classic because they just pale in comparison to the other ones. But there are some which are like, that's okay. But his delivery of one song he sings where he's singing about how much he wants to find the mystery girl. I don't know what, I think he didn't know what he wanted to do with his body. But there was a lot of sniggering in the audience. And maybe that's not on him. But just that is amongst a few things in here that are just kind of cringy. There's also like a rap from Scuttle in here, voiced by Awkwafina, which just didn't work for me. However, I will say the CGI creatures that are in here, voiced by obviously new talent, I didn't hate. I thought were okay. Daveed Diggs as Sebastian, to be fair, I didn't like him in the beginning, but he did grow on me. He is no Samuel E. Wright. He is, much like Pat Carroll, he is the Sebastian. But credit to him, he's not trying to copy that performance either. He's putting his own spin on Sebastian. And after a while, I was like, okay. His delivery seems a little flat, but maybe that's just because Samuel E. Wright was just so... Sebastian in that original movie was just so larger than life. Same with Awkwafina as Scuttle. I feel like it's hard for Awkwafina. She would be great, I think, if they just said, you don't need a script. You're just Scuttle. Say things. And I think she'd kill it. But she's limited by, as I said before, the line she has to deliver to stick to the premise of the original. And even putting her Awkwafina spin on it, it doesn't give her a lot of room to breathe. But she's still entertaining. Of the three, my favorite was Jacob Trembly as Flounder. Now, he also scared me a bit. That's got nothing to do with how he looks. I know there's a meme online at the moment that Flounder is the most terrifying thing people have ever seen. I disagree with that entirely. And I don't like fish. I thought he was one of the cutest things I've ever seen. No, this is completely irrelevant to the movie. It's just a little thing of mine that I thought I'd mention, which is the last thing I saw Jacob Tremblay in was in Doctor Sleep, where he was eviscerated by evil, demon-shining humans. And when he spoke and he'd yell, it just reminded me of that scene, and that scene is so unsettling. So that kind of pulled me out of the movie, but that's not the movie's fault. That's a Spliced in later problem, and I just have to get past it. Hopefully one day I will. But I thought he was cute. He was like a little kid. I appreciated that portrayal of a Flounder. He was limited by the thing that's the real problem of this movie, which is the need to apparently make it lifelike. So he is a fish that has to abide to real life fish rules. So he can't jump out of the water. He can't participate in a lot of scenes because he flops around on deck. And even Sebastian's like, you got to get out of back in the water, man. You're gonna not drown. What's the opposite of drown? Suffocate? Whatever. Who cares? So that's the big issue with the movie for me. And it's the thing that sort of plagued The Lion King as well. It's with these live action Disney movies, the powers that be seem to really want to lean into, what if the Little Mermaid was in real life? That means that everything you see has to be just like real life, which is ludicrous when you think about it, because you're watching a movie with mermaids. They're not real. And when it comes to magic, like Ursula casting her spells to give Ariel legs, or Triton's magical trident, there is allowing him for those specific things, fantasy, but only the specific things that are essential to the story unfolding. Otherwise, everything else apparently has to be as realistic as possible, which takes away from a lot of the magic that you would get from The Little Mermaid. When you're restricted by those things, you can't execute a lot of the scenes the way you want to. Ludicrously, only Sebastian, Flounder, and Scuttle speak in this movie. All other sea creatures are mute. I don't know why. I don't know why only those three characters are allowed to speak and the others aren't. But it's really apparent when Sebastian sings his iconic Under the Sea song. In the original Little Mermaid, it becomes this big, bombastic, jazzy number, one of the best Disney songs ever, where he's literally singing about a hot crustacean band, and all the sea creatures come out and sing along with him and play their jazz instruments, and it's great. In here, only Sebastian sings, and Ariel does a little accompanying here and there. And when the sea creatures come out to sort of participate in the song, they're just sort of spinning around and just doing normal sea stuff. They're not really they're certainly not playing any instruments, that for sure. And you notice it. You're like, okay, all right, this is not as fun as it could be, because apparently the turtles have to just do turtle things, and the manatees just have to do manatee things. And then flipping further in on that, when you're making things so realistic as possible, some of this stuff just doesn't work. There's a scene in that sequence where Ariel starts swimming amongst a huge swarm of jellyfish, and she's like swimming past them and touching them and laying back on them like they're a bed. And all I was thinking was, oh my god, she's getting stung. Those jellyfish are horrifying. They don't have any eyes. They're just bobbing there. And I think we can all agree, jellyfish are probably one of the most terrifying things to ever exist. So it's stuff like that. And I mean, then you have King Triton's kingdom. You can't see my air quotation marks, but his kingdom is just rocks under the sea. You don't get the big golden castle with the gleaming gates. He just sits on a rock, and I guess his throne is just a cave that he sits in. Sometimes they have some clever things that they do, like his cape is made of krill. I thought that was pretty cool. But a lot of the time, it's just them sitting around on the bottom of the ocean, and it's drab and lifeless. So that's where I think that's my biggest gripe with the film, is that in this incessant need to apparently make things as realistic as possible, even when you've got mermaids and magic and tridents and stuff, you have to make sure all the fish creatures are mute and inanimate, and you have to make sure that there is no golden gates under the sea, because that's not something that's under the sea. I don't know. Maybe it's just a pet peeve, but that really pulled me out of the movie. But at the end of the day, I think both the safety net of the film, but also its biggest draw, is that because it plays it so safe with adapting The Little Mermaid, there's nothing about it that really stands out, even in a good way or a bad way. There's nothing that's so unbelievably odd that you talk about it afterwards, and there's nothing that's so visually impressive that you talk about it afterwards. It's just sort of like, yep, that was The Little Mermaid. That's the story I know. The performances were good. I didn't mention Javier Bardem as King Triton because I don't want to. That was a flat, boring performance, which is not Javier Bardem's fault, maybe, unless he was just phoning it in. But I know that guy can do better. He looked like he was having a nap the whole movie. But everybody else, putting in their worth. Again, Halle Bailey was wonderful as Ariel, and I think everybody else put in better performance than I expected them to. They were just very limited by the very, very large safety net that was put over this film. Time will tell how people react to it. It will frustrate me if people pick this movie to be like, oh yeah, this is the Disney remake Disney got right, because it's got just as many issues that everybody have picked apart from other ones. But if it also gets unfairly lampooned, I also don't think it's deserving of that. Basically, I give it a solid down the middle 7 out of 10. It is an entertaining adaptation of The Little Mermaid. You won't regret seeing it if you see it. You won't be insulted by anything you see. You'll be left wanting in some areas, but pleasantly surprised in others. And in the realm of live-action Disney remakes, this could have been a lot worse. Could have been a bit better, but it could have been a lot worse. There, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed. It's not been a particularly exciting review, but they are just my honest thoughts. Reviewing live-action Disney films are hard because it's such a controversial topic, and it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what it is about these films that either work for people or make them so unbelievably mad. But when you get one like this, which is just so down the middle, it's a relief that it's an entertaining film, but it provides you with very little to actually really dive into for a movie review podcast show. But there you are. Next week, I believe, is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. If you want me to dive into how much I love a movie, that's probably the one I put my money on. Who knows? It could suck. I'd be very surprised. But be sure to tune in next week for that one, because I'm very excited. I'm anticipating that one greatly, so you should too. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good weekend. If you're here in Australia and you live in the ACT, happy long weekend, everybody. If you live anywhere else, oh well, I'm sorry. Maybe next time. But until next week, I love and appreciate you. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.